So today, what I want to do is to change things up a little bit during the summer. I'm going to be doing some text teachings. I chose this text based on some events that were going on in the week earlier in the week, and now we're going to use it for maybe a different purpose. But I want to just kind of say out loud what I think what I've heard from many congregants is that being torn between kind of what's going on in America, especially with what's going on in California and immigration, and what's going on in Israel. And for me, it kind of speaks to the nature of what it means to be a Jewish American and to be a Jew living outside of Israel, to have your heart in Israel, your body in other places, and also to have your heart here, and the complicated dance that we have as Jewish Americans. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that. I am going to add something a little bit, a preamble to the prayer for our congregation, kind of speaking about the events that are happening right now in our country. That was written by Rabbi Annie Lewis from the Rabbinical Assembly. But first, I wanted to do a little learning. And this has to do with, ironically, this week's parashah has a lot to do with battle and war. And they're preparing Bnei Israel to go to war. And how do they do it? And so there's a very interesting line in this week's parsha, Numbers 10:9, and it says, "Aseh lecha shtei chatzotzrot kesef miksha ta'aseh otam v'hayu lecha lamikra ha'ida u'lemasa et hamachanot." So the translation is a little translation: make yourself 2 trumpets of silver, and these are shofars. Of hammered work you are to make them. They are to be for you for calling together the community. They say Eidah here. They translate as community. And for signaling the marching of the camps. The text sheets are on the podium there. Not there. Those are not the text sheets. They're on there. Yeah. So right away, I just want to kind of point something out. What do the rabbis have questions about? So there's a lot of doubling. There's a lot of repetition here. So just to give a little context, what happens later is that these trumpets are given certain, there are certain different sounds that you make for different things when you're going into battle, when you're not going into battle, and it becomes the basis for, anyone know? Rosh Hashanah. Tekiah, Teruah, Shvarim, this becomes the basis for it, and ironically it comes from war. It's the message. It comes from war. Perhaps that's a message about Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment, that we go into war, you don't know who's coming back. And it's kind of like that in Rosh Hashanah, if we think about it in the same way. But I want to give a teaching, or offer a teaching from Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik. He was the head of the Yeshiva University, one of the great leaders of modern Orthodoxy in America, in the world. And he gave an address at Yeshiva University on the occasion of Yom Ha'atzmaut in 1956. And he is speaking about this line. So we're going to read it together, and then we're going to discuss. In order to explain the difference between a people of fate and a nation of destiny, it is appropriate to deal with different contrasts. Let me explain real quick what is he talking about here. He's looking at, in the pasuk, it says, the word, you see in Hebrew, it says Eidah, and then it says Machanot. So he's saying, what is the difference between an Eidah, a community, a group, versus a camp, a Machaneh? So this is what we're trying to get at here. So he says the Torah used both of these concepts with respect to Israel. Make for yourself 2 trumpets of hammered work, and they shall be to summon the congregation and for causing the encampments to set forth. Encampment and congregation, or machanot and Eidah, constitute 2 different sociological experiences, 2 separate groups that have nothing in common and do not support one another. An encampment or a machaneh is created out of a desire for self-defense and thrives on fear. Congregation Edah is fashioned out of a longing for the realization of an exalted moral idea and thrives on love. In the encampment, fate's rule is unlimited, whereas destiny rules the congregation. The encampment represents a phase in the development of the nation's history. The continued survival of a people is identified with the existence of the congregation. An encampment, in its essence, is not a uniquely human phenomenon. One finds its traces in the animal kingdom as well. There, too, the encampment serves as a shield against outside danger. When fear of attack grips herds of cattle and sheep, they tumble down in a crazed frenzy from every green mountain and grassy place and run towards each other, lock horns, and butt their heads. Fear finds its instinctive expression in a common quest for protection through gathering together. The secret of individuals uniting into one camp in the face of peril is well known to the animal instinct. In man's world, too, an encampment is created solely from fear. When fateful choiceness, existence, terrifies man, the individual grasps the inadequacy of his strength and aligns himself with others for purposes of self-defense in order to prevail over a common enemy. The establishment of an encampment, a machaneh, is a stratagem of warfare. Learn what the Torah has taught when you shall go out as an encampment against your enemy. Deuteronomy 23:10 emphasizes. An encampment is born out of the terror of destruction and loss, from the fear that fate is overwhelming. From the midst of the encampment, the people arises. In the beginning, the Jews in Egypt were an encampment. When they were freed by the Holy One, they rose to the level of a nation. Indeed, the Edah, the congregation, has a special place in the kingdom of man and in his mighty spirit. The congregation is man's characteristic creation, and his gloriousness hovers over it. The congregation is not created as a result of negative causes or out of fear of the fate that pursues man, who senses his own misery and feebleness, but rather as a result of positive impulses. Destiny is the foundation of the congregation. An Edah congregation is a collection of individuals with a single past, a common future, shared aspirations, identical yearnings for a world that is totally good and pleasant, and a singular, harmonious destiny. The beginnings of the congregation are embedded in the tradition of the people's ancestors at the dawn of its existence. Its end is rooted in a common vision of the end of days. The people of the congregation are witnesses to the events that have passed and to the miraculous future that has not yet arrived. The congregation encompasses not only those who are alive today, but everyone who has lived and who will live from the dawn of humanity until the end of days. The dead who have passed on are still alive within the confines of the Edah, the congregation, and those destined to be born are already alive within its jurisdiction. A congregation is a holy nation that does not fear fate and does not live against its will. It believes in its destiny and of its free will sanctifies itself for its realization. The covenant of Egypt was made a holy people that was born in the encampment. The covenant of Sinai was concluded with a holy people. So pretty heavy, dense text. What I'd like to do is just take a couple moments to speak to the people around you and do a little chavruta, not to do the next text, but just the text that we just read, and to see what are the ideas that are coming out for you, considering what we're going through, whether it's in Israel or in America. What is jumping out at you? What is speaking to you at this moment and from the text? So let's take about 2 minutes and discuss with the people around you. And I'd love to hear some feedback, some things you discussed. If anyone wants to share it, we could use the microphone so everyone can hear it. Anyone like to share anything that came out of your discussion? Yes.
Okay, what we learn here is basically the difference, and I don't agree with everything he says or the way he said it, which I think but whatever. There's the idea of there can be a group of people, and that people is united by common goals. When it is positive common goals for the future, that they are trying to reach something that's a congregation. However, when it is like animals gathering at night in the forest for protection, that's an encampment. So it isn't concerned with the future and great ideal. It's concerned more with protection. And the other thing that we got to is the idea that, well, what about if Am Yisrael is a congregation, what about the Golah? That is, if they are spread all over the world in the diaspora, is that a single congregation? Or maybe it is a congregation with sub-congregations, because they can't have, one ideal when they're so spread out. And then was brought up, well, what about on Zoom? Can you have a congregation on Zoom?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Jessica, we're going to bring it over here. Here you go.
Thank you. It's funny because Lori and I our heads went to the same place where I've never really thought about camp like a machaneh and an eidah as being two separate entities, because when I think of machaneh, I think of like machaneh Ramah, right? Like where I grew up, where Lori's kids grew up, and in machaneh Ramah we had our eidahs, right? So like automatically my head goes like that's one and the same. And I said that like what's very interesting is like I grew up at yeshiva, and like I really like didn't have many public school friends, but my kids do. And what I think is so interesting, and I talk to my mom all the time, is this concept of like none of my kids' friends go to sleepaway camp or camp. It's like a very, what I like to think is like a very Jewish thing. And what we were talking about was kind of like when your kids go to public school and they are, you kind of like want to put them back in that like encampment over the summer of their, like almost like finding their like congregation, so to speak, and their identity. And Lori what did you say about, you were saying something about, oh yeah, just like that. Like that's where people often find their Jewish identity, is in that like encampment, so to speak.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, Bernie.
So this morning there was a blog that I follow, Heather Cox Richardson. She talked about how the Army was founded 250 years ago, and it was a reaction. It was founded out of fear because of the British and all that stuff. And eventually that army that was there in a reaction out of fear became a country, or represented a country. And I guess you could say the country was a community with one focus. But now we fast forward to 250 years where we are today, and we find millions of people in our country living in fear. And out protesting by the millions. And so I think the definition, or what defines a country versus a community versus a congregation, is kind of a moving target and very fluid.
Yep. All right, anyone else? Yes, we're going to move to this side of the room. We'll give it to Cersei, and then we're going to hand it over to Marty.
To me, the encampment is where everybody goes when they're scared, but the congregation are the anointed, going forward, blessed, having a vision. Not everybody walks with them. Sometimes people stay back in the encampment and wave, but the congregation is just like we have a vision. We are not just looking at what happened.
You just hand it over to Marty.
Okay, so I'm going to take a couple minutes if you don't mind. We talked about this, and there's a time for both an encampment and for a congregation. A congregation is primarily an aspirational goal. It's something that we all want. The comment was made, why can't we all play nice in the sandbox together? And that would be a wonderful thing. And ideally, I think we'd all love to be in that position. Unfortunately, the guys outside the sandbox don't necessarily want to play the same game. So there is a time for an encampment, and I believe, personally, that all of the Jewish world and our supporters, and thankfully there are some out there, believe that we are now in an encampment position where we have to do what is necessary to take care of ourselves. I read an article last night, and it was just a little nothing blurb, and it was about a woman who was volunteering in Israel right now, and she went into a local grocery store, and for a few shekels she bought a couple boxes of cherries and distributed them to soldiers there. And the soldiers were very touched that this woman went out and did this for them. And the point is not the cherries. The point is that those soldiers knew that there was someone who was there to help them and take care of them. So here we are in diaspora, and we see things happening in Israel, and we go, tisk, tisk, that's terrible, it's awful. We need to be participants in what's going on. And each and every one of us needs to do everything we possibly can to show the soldiers in Israel, the people in Israel, that we're behind them, we support them 100%. How difficult must it be for a soldier to go out defending Israel and see Jewish kids on campuses telling them what a terrible thing that they're doing? All right, so I'm asking everybody in here, and again, I apologize for being so vociferous here. You each have to do your part. And that can entail volunteering in some way, writing letters to Congress people to show the level of support that we have. I mean, personally, I'm on APAC all the time. It's a wonderful place to get involved with things and see what's going on, and their speeches and speakers are wonderful. But the other thing about APAC is you can go on there and it'll direct you to your Congress people with pre-written letters, or you can write your own, whatever it may be. And you know, when you hear people criticizing, you have to stand up for who you are. You can't let it just happen. So we have to make sure that those people that are risking their lives day in, day out, know that we are part of their lives. And we support them, and we respect, and we're there for them. So again, I'm just saying all of us need to do whatever we can. And again, just going back to the learning, we're all part of an encampment right now. And we have to do what we need to do because the other guys are just not playing nice in the sandbox.
All right. So thank you. We're going to wrap it up. One of the things that I kind of came around to in this text was this idea. No, it's all good. This idea that, you know, in Rabbi Soloveitchik's kind of mind, we started as an encampment in Egypt, scared about resources, you know, everyone for himself, where you're huddled together for protection. You see that as they're going to Sinai, there's the pillar of fire that surrounds them and the cloud during the day. And when they get to Sinai, something changes. They become an Eidah. They have something that connects them, not fear of the past, but a hope for the future. And something that is flourishing rather than diminishing. So Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks wrote in his commentary on Rabbi Soloveitchik's, on this passage, he says, these are not just two types of groups, but in most of the profound sense, two different ways of existing and relating to the world. A camp is brought into being by what happens to it from the outside. A congregation comes into existence by internal decision. The former is reactive, the latter is proactive. The first is a response to what has happened to the group in the past. The second represents what the group seeks to achieve in the future. Whereas camps exist even in the animal kingdom, congregations are uniquely human. They flow from the human ability to think, speak, communicate, envision a society different from any that has existed in the past, and to collaborate to bring it about. So when I think about two countries that began not out of fear but out of ideals, I do think about America and Israel, the modern state of Israel. They have that unique connection. You know, we said, yes, today is Flag Day, and we think about the Army and the importance of it. But we forget that Zionism didn't start with armies, but with farmers. And eventually they needed armies, right? You need to defend yourself or else you're not going to live. And that also can kind of turn us, can change us, and it has. We've become, I would say, a little bit more harsh as Jews around the world. And when I think about how Israel is feeling, very much alone. When I went there, I spoke in English almost the entire time. Why? I speak fluent Hebrew. It's not why. It's because you could see the change on their faces when you speak in English. They're like, wow, someone's here. Thank you. Every person I spoke to, thank you for being here. They feel like they're in like a prison in that way. No one, they're looked down on, and no one appreciates or understands them. And the danger is that many people feel that way. We have people in this country who feel that way as well, feeling under siege. That connects to this other thing. And it speaks to the kind of like gentle, the dance that we do between protecting ourselves, between being idealistic, looking towards the future. If you get too much encampment, right, you can't be idealistic, you can't look towards the future. If you have too much idealism, you may not survive because you don't protect yourself. This is the balance that we have. But I do want to end by talking about kind of current events. And I'm going to talk about, right now, Israel is on my mind. And it's first. When I think about Iran, I think about a country that has said for a singular focus since their 47 years was death to America and death to Israel. They have put all much of their resources, just like the Hamas has into those tunnels, Iran has put into their nuclear program, to missiles, ballistic missiles, all that stuff. We're seeing it now. And the interesting thing is people are asking, how did Israel do what they did? People are going to be looking back on history and saying this was one of the greatest military victories or military operations in history. How did they do it? They did it because they had thousands of people in Iran helping them. Why is that? Because the people, when you're in an encampment society and you're being oppressed, and all you think about is death and destruction, we show that that doesn't connect to people. The Iranian people, they're a proud people. They're not necessarily a reflection of their leaders. And I look to them to say, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, this is a new breath of freedom. And you see here, the evidence is there. Israel would not have been able to do what they did without the support of Iranians who see that their country is heading towards a death spiral. So as we think about that, I want us all to think as well about how we feel in this country. Now, we can feel like we're under siege, and yes, many of us feel that way. At the same time, if we're always under siege and we only care about ourselves, then we miss out on caring about others. And this is the balance that we have as being Jewish Americans. We have to support ourselves. We have to protect ourselves. But we can't just be about ourselves. Hillel had his famous dictum, Im einani li mi li. If I'm not for me, who will be for me? And he says, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Ukshani, that's me. And then he says, if not now, when? So this is the challenge that we have. We can't wait until after to kind of balance these things. We've got to do it simultaneously, all at the same time. Just like encampment and congregation, we're kind of stuck between those two all the time. And it's up to us to balance it.